We have a proposal to essentially improve Reg NMS and maybe fix some of the deficiencies of Reg NMS. But before I really embark on telling you exactly what the proposal is, when I say fix the deficiencies, we have to agree on what needs fixing. So we'll go through a little exercise to see if we're on the same page on what needs fixing. And the little exercise will be part of a game, and there are 4 iPads to win. You have gizmos on the table. Please take one. So fair and efficient markets, but it's really not sufficient. That would be what is needed in regulation in general, but for the capital markets, you need also transparent markets. And why do you need that? Because being fair is not sufficient. You need to be recognized by the public at large as being fair. And you have to make sure that no book like Flash Boy gets written ever again. So that's the goal of a good regulation. So let me add another little tweak in what a good regulation should be. Good regulation should be simple. So if you go about doing regulation and write 10,000 pages of regulation to promote competition, you actually achieve completely the opposite of what you're trying to do. Because the incumbents have gone through the 10,000 pages, they have their interpretation because the rules may be long, but they're never really precise. And the new upstarts are faced with something that they cannot do. They cannot break into the business, which is overly obfuscated by very complicated regulation. So not only do you put big barriers to entry by producing long and complicated regulation, but you also, undermine the trust. Because if nobody understands the rules, how can you trust in the outcome of the rules? So really good regulation should be simple. Let me start with a little word about ourselves and why we care about regulation. So I'm the co-founder of McKay Brothers and Quincy Data. McKay Brothers is the leader in the US on point-to-point microwave communication, so we're presumably the fastest commercial offering in the US between almost any 2 points. I think there's one couple in which we're not the fastest. It's on the website. We do indicate when we believe we're the fastest, and we do indicate when we're not. McKay Brothers sells bandwidth to its clients, and Quincy Data uses some of that bandwidth to send market data around. So we have the CME, we have ICE, we have NASDAQ ETFs, and we have eSpeed, and we've recently added Eurex because we're also present in Europe. And really what defines our company is that we want to produce a level playing field. And we sell the service to everyone exactly the same. There are no backdoor deals, no special deals. We serve everyone the same. But serving everyone the same is not sufficient to level the playing field. You really have to be faster than the other guys that do it for themselves. So the prop shops that build networks for their own use. So we have to be faster than them to be able to offer a service that will actually level the playing field. So that's what we try and do. And I will show you a little bit how we do this. So this is not exactly the network. It's not as straight as that, but it's pretty close. And really what we're faced is an n-squared problem. We have 9 data centers in the US, and really we should connect all the 9 dots by one straight line from A to each of the other ones. So that's n9 times n plus 110 divided by 2, 45 straight lines that I should draw. That's not very economical. So what I do is I reuse some of the path. And as you can see here on the main picture, we go from Chicago to New Jersey, but we really break off far away in Pennsylvania to serve Mahwah, which we've opened very recently. And the New Jersey NY2, NY4, Weehawken, Center New Jersey. and also NASDAQ directly. So we actually branch off very early to be sure to be fastest to any point. And if you look at the inset and maybe focus on the inset at the bottom, at the very bottom, you can see that we do the crazy thing of going to NY4 and NY2 independently. We're not going to NY2 and then cross-connecting to NY4. It's a couple of 100 meters apart. That's way too long. So we don't want to incur the very long fiber cross-connect, so we go direct to NY2 and NY4. In this game, to offer a level playing field, you have to be crazier than the craziest guys around, and there are very crazy guys around. So that's why we try. That's what we try to do. Let me show you a little bit the European side, which opens between now and December. It's going to be mostly done, all of the blue lines. So here you can see the topography is a little different. Frankfurt is the same as Chicago. It's the big futures exchange. And then you have, I'm sure guys from London would hate to be compared to New Jersey, but they're New Jersey here. They'll take it. But the data centers are not laid out the same way. They're laid out almost parallel to the London to Frankfurt line. So the problem is slightly different. We branch off differently. And if you look at the inset on the top left, there's also a very interesting thing that we do around the LSC to connect Slough to Basildon to the LSC and everything, and by reusing the most we can. So we have this beautiful little diamond-shaped form for the network, which actually achieves the fastest latency when we open very soon between any two data centers over there yet also. So that's what we do. Now, let me go to the questions. You don't get points for this. Here, really, you need to, it's a poll question. I'd like to know who you are, what you think, and where you come from, so that I can base my proposal on who you are. So please answer the question. All right, let's see the results. Well, it's split. Okay, so it's going to be fun. So a small majority, because I would say 53 over 32 is not a huge majority, is in favor of not rigged, but we still have a third saying it's rigged. All right, let's study that, and let's go to the next question. No points for that. That's surprising too. I would have guessed number one. But I think you're right. In truth, there has not been a good explanation. And so if I take this home a little bit, like this small majority says not rigged, and a small majority says, we don't really understand what's going on, if I can summarize it that way. And I would agree with that. Can I go to the next slide? All right, so there is the real question. Now, you have to read it. You have to answer as fast as you can, because you get points for answering faster. This is coming from a paper, very recent, published by Handeshot, which is studying the NBBO SIP feed. Music. Well, no clear winner. So what's the blinking one? No, the right answer is 2 milliseconds. I'm sorry for the 28%. The right answer is 2 milliseconds. Definitely. So 2 milliseconds, is that long or is that short? Well, it takes 100 microseconds to go from NASDAQ to BATS. So if it takes 100 microseconds to go from NASDAQ to BATS, if you're late by 2 milliseconds, that's 20 times the time it takes to go from NASDAQ to BATS. So I would say, even though it may not be intuitive, it's horrendously slow. All right, so let's go to the next question. That's a tough one. So read the question well. Was the average percentage loss incurred by an infrequent investor as a consequence of suboptimal routing of a market order to a lit exchange based on the SIP feed? So, the guy is routing to the wrong place because the SIP is 2 milliseconds late. What's the average loss? Well, one answer. We have 4 iPads. Well, you got to try hard, but you can still win. So it is shocking, but it's actually nothing. So, and that supports the motion that the markets have never, ever been better for the sole investor sending a market order. There's nothing rigged about this. Let's go to the next question, which is actually a little tougher. So what is the expected loss of trading Apple on a dark pool at the SIP NBBO when SIP is stale? All right, so what does that mean? You're on a dark pool, and you're crossing at the mid or at the NBBO, and you're actually using the wrong NBBO because dark pool is using the SIP, which is slow. And that's not an average statement. That's a conditional upon being stupid or being, something. So that's the question. So what is the answer there? Well, good. Good job. And that is not small. So that's 40 mils. So there's something there. And if you look, and by the way, the 3 questions are taken out of the paper by Hendershot. So if you want to go through it, it's very interesting. How slow is the NBBO? I recommend it. But there you can see there's a little bit of an issue. All right. So now we will announce the winners at the end. And if I can go to the next slide. Now, through those questions and through this little things, I wanted to establish a little bit of a starting point, a ground from which we can decide what needs fixing. So trading in liquid equities is cheap and efficient. It's never been cheaper. It's never been more efficient. But I will agree with you, with the majority of you, the markets are too complex. And they're too complex in essentially 2 ways. They're too complex because they are connected, and the interconnection of the markets makes them complex, and that's what is the answer to the flash crash. Something triggered something else, which triggered something else, and that ingrained connectivity, the linkage that was imposed by Reg NMS, makes them a very complex system that really, I believe, nobody understands. And they're also complex at a different level. They're complex at the order type level. And that's the controversy around all the order types that were created to actually circumvent the unintended consequences of order protection for Reg NMS. Now, the other thing, it's not obvious there, but I'm chip it in. HFT is used to sell books, and the real issue here is not HFT, it's selling the books and saying the markets are rigged, and that's what's having a big effect. That's, the real villain is the guy saying this, in my humble opinion. So now, let's go back to what we should do. Regulation grounded in real data. And actual transparency, and by actual transparencies, I really mean actionable transparency. A transparency that people can actually understand and use. So let's go to our first proposal. All right. So that's a little dense. It's part of my 10-page regulatory proposal. And the first proposal is in some ways simple. It's publish trade data. And I'm really expecting what's new? Like it's already done. And the truth is, it's not done. There are many exceptions. Off-hour trades are not published. And when trades are published, they don't tell you where it was published. They're not time-stamped precisely. So publish just the trade data. Like, don't worry about CATs or the order routing, the $10 billion or the $1 billion question, which I really believe is going to be totally useless and a big waste of money. Just concentrate on something which is not big data. Concentrate on small data. Publish all the trades, timestamp them to better than 10 microseconds, put a UID, a unique identifier, for all the matching engines, and locate the matching engines. A matching engine in Alaska is not the same as a matching engine in New Jersey. And we're really in a world where what counts is not just the timestamping, but where it was timestamped also. So you have to do that, uniquely identify matching engines, and timestamp, and make the data available for everyone free of charge in a simple format. It's something which is really small data. All the trades of the world would fit on a thumb drive for one day. So it's really very simple. And it has profound effect if you tie it with the second bit of the proposal. So what counts really here is to enable a dialogue between a seller of the service, the broker, and a buyer of the service, the end client. And what you need to do is you need to make sure that when an end client goes to a broker and tells them, please execute that basket or that big order for 1,000 or maybe 1,000,000 stocks, then when the broker does it, he can actually give information on what he did in a very granular and precise way. Not in a 605, Rule 605 kind of averaged way, which is marginally useful, but definitely not very useful, but in a very granular way. So the way I think that we should be able to do that is any guy going to a broker should be able to say, please send me the list of the orders, of the trades that constitute my execution. If you do that, you have unique matching engine IDs, you have unique trade IDs within a matching engine, and then you can look in the public data source all the trades that constitute your execution for one given execution, not an average of executions. And then, based on that, that's a very simple CSV file. You turn to anyone doing data analysis. There are many firms that will prop up and that do exist today, that do very good work on the limited amount of information they have. And you can tell them, please tell me, did my broker do a good job? And by the way, there's a big proportion of the trades going to that dark pool. And on average, when I trade on that dark pool, I get executed, a 1/10 of a cent worse than when I trade on a lit market. Why is that? Please explain. So by enabling an informed discussion at a very granular level between the provider of the service and the consumer of the service, there you will really make sure that you have sound competition, because you can be sure that the clients will demand good service from their brokers. So that's really the most important proposition. And I think it has applications for illiquid securities. You can do that for liquid securities exactly the same way you did for liquid securities. There's nothing stopping you. You can do that actually even for futures. But let's stay on Reg NMS. Reg NMS is tough enough to change. And I think that's essentially a $1 million answer to the $1 billion question of the cats. Now, let me get to the second proposal. So the second proposal is really remove order protection. So this one I'll discuss briefly because based on my limited understanding of the dynamics of the SEC discussions and maybe the Congress and what have you, this is probably not going to get done. I just want to be on the record with you that I propose that, and I think it's the thing that would help the markets. It's not that order protection was not the right thing to do when it was enacted, but it's useless now, and it has produced many of the side effects, such as all the complex order types that we complain about today. So this one, really you don't need it, and the reason you don't need it, you can see that in Europe. Europe, the markets are very well synchronized, there's no issue, and they don't have order protection. You really don't need order protection. You don't even need it to foster competition and make a place for the incumbents. BATS, I think, is the biggest market in Europe if you account for all the equities. And they did that without order protection and without the routing to the protected quotes. So you really don't need that. And by removing it, you would get rid of flash orders, the hide not slide, the ISOs, and a ton of the bestiary of complex orders. Now, let's pause a little bit because the second bit of the proposal, let's not discuss it, but the first one is, I think, very profound. And it sounds simple. So I'd like to elicit from you questions. And to do that, I will show you some of the questions that I've listed on my white paper and answered so that you have an idea of what you might ask if you want to ask those. But you're welcome to ask any question. And now is the time, the very awkward time, where you have to step up and ask a question. Two timestamps. That's a very good question. I've added two timestamps because there are two things that are relevant: when the trade happens and when it gets published, so that other people know. So that's why you need two timestamps.
I've got to use it to see where there's a delay in the network. It could be. Can you think of different ways that could be useful to either regulators or traders?
So I would say one of the ways is exactly what Michael Lewis had in his book, is you see the ripple down effect of one trade. So you see it trading somewhere. So maybe a less sophisticated broker, such as the one which is the hero of the book, Flash Boys, goes out and sends a trade and triggers down a ripple down effect, which anyone who had access to that data, for instance, or who knew what he was doing, should have known. So that would be evident. And there would be no questions asked, no books written, no big hula hoop.
Hi, Peter Burdeklis, Maple. I agree with everything. I agree with everything that you've said, except the impact of HFT, because the real problem with Reg NMS, which I agree with you should be abolished, the real problem with Reg NMS and the special order types is the ability to guarantee front of the queue at all times for the handful of traders that that have that connectivity and they can at will turn off order protection rules through special order types. It's a significant problem with adverse selection. I agree with you that anybody who's small enough to be able to execute immediately across the bid-ask spread has never had it better, and they should, but everybody else does not have it better. And as to the time, sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. I think that's a very valid point. I partially agree. I think that's a 0.1% question. It's not a 10 bips question. It's not a 50 bips question.
I'm an institutional statistical arbitrage trader. It's not a 0.1 bips question. It is shut down a lot of my competitors who haven't been able to adapt and have suffered massive adverse selection because it skews your ability to build the portfolio that you are targeting, because you lose too much of your good trades and get all of your bad ones.
So let me qualify my response, and it's not grounded in data because we don't have the data yet. But my response, which is grounded in reading some of the academic analyses of that, is that it really is a small fraction. And what you incur is something different, which is not coming from the order types. If you have a big block to move, you signal it. But it's not got nothing to do with these order types. It would be the same with a different market structure because you would be recognized. So I think you're right in saying that you have an issue. Your executions may be seen in the market, and they're more seen if you're going through a less sophisticated broker, and less seen if you're going to a really sophisticated broker. But really, the difference between the small order types is a very small fraction of that.
I've read the same academics, and they're wrong. I've trade 100 million shares a year. This is my own personal experience. The fact that you will lose Q position at every tick change is something that has been ignored by academics because I don't think they understand the game theory aspect of how HFT works. What appears to be a small advantage from order types and order protection is not a small advantage. It is the entire basis of the $28 billion a year HFT business. And if you consider the size of profits being transferred out of institutional shareholders into HFT because of what appears to be an insignificant advantage, it's clear that it's not insignificant. The solution, I agree with you. Everything you've said, I agree with, but I think you underestimate the significance of what those changes are, and that's also why there's going to be so much fight against it.
I think we have to agree to disagree, but I will make a guess. Did you say rigged?
I did. Well, no, but I said it because it was. I said it because there were really only two choices. I don't believe that there's been some grand conspiracy, but there's certainly been the people who are the most active in the markets have intentionally and with good reason influenced market changes, like the generation of new order types, which other people who didn't realize the benefits didn't influence. So it's not like there was somebody setting it up, but people, talked their book and they got things done that was good for them.
But by the way, another thing that I could object to your reasoning is that there's nothing reserved to HFT in those order types. Anyone has access to it. So it's a free opportunity land. So there's nothing which stops you from doing it.
The realities of the infrastructure required to be able to implement those order types legally and follow all the rules. And I've never said that HFT violates rules, other than some who do. But the cost of that makes it prohibitive to anybody but somebody in the business of adverse selection to actually do. And brokers don't spend the money because their margins are already almost non-existent.
So let me ask, if you will, another question. I'm sorry for the other questions, but I'm really passionate about this one. How are your executions in Europe? Do you trade Europe?
Not.
Okay. I think you would hear the same complaints in Europe, and these order types don't exist in Europe. So I strongly believe it has nothing to do with the order types. It has to do with the fact that when you go into the market, you actually signal your presence, and people recognize it, and the market impact takes this into account. Well, let's keep it open as a discussion item.
Let's get your solutions passed, and we'll both be happy.
Absolutely. Thank you.